Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to welcome Farid Mirbagheri. He's a professor of international relations and a non-resident fellow at the School of Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of St. Andrews. Farid is also a senior fellow at Strategy International, a newly established think tank in Cyprus. He left Iran a long time ago and settled in Cyprus, where he spent over 25 years teaching at the University of Nicosia and heading the Center for World Dialogue. Thank you so much for joining us today, Farid. If I can ask you first, where is Iran now since the start of the 12-day war with Israel?
Its weaknesses have been exposed. Politically, the country, I think the top echelon, the political leadership is divided amongst themselves. Some wants to take a very hard line, some wants to be more compromising. But as for the people, they are more than ever disillusioned, and they are more than ever certain that the government is not competent to run the country, the establishment, and they want fundamental changes to take place. Government is worried about that because we've had uprisings in the past decades, several of them, and they've been threatening to the establishment. So is watching it very, very closely. Economy is in dire straits, terrible. There is shortage of water. There is water rationing. There are power outages. And basically, economy is in terrible shape, politically more isolated, and militarily exposed.
And do you think that Iran's role in the region has significantly changed?
I would have to say weakened. Iran's proxies in Lebanon have all but disappeared. I mean, militarily, Hamas is shaken to its foundation. Syria, Bashar Assad is no longer in power, so they have no corridor to aid and sustain Hezbollah. Iraqi militias are struggling, a constant struggle to maintain their position. And Houthis now are exposed and bombarded, I think, by the states or by Israel. And they're also in a weak position. So proxies of Iranian government basically have disappeared. They have obviously reduced the influence that Iran had in the region. Domestically, Iran is weaker, its economy. As I said just a few moments ago, in its foreign relations, it's very much disappointed that Russia and China did anything at all more than verbal support for the country. And the neighboring countries also seemed pretty aloof. So Iran feels isolated, exposed, and weak. Yes, the 12-day war has left its mark. And I heard one of the sites on the internet that the top military and political commanders, they keep changing their place of residence and every night to sleep in different places, just out of concern, fear for the security. So they are shaken very much. They are divided, and in the region also they are more isolated, with President Trump coming to power, with his trip to Saudi Arabia, with the lucrative contracts he signed with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar. Now with Israel attack and the United States taking out the nuclear facilities. All in all, they don't look good for the Islamic Republic. Domestically, regionally, and internationally, it's been weakened, and it would be a surprise if the Islamic Republic could survive this in its present form, unless some serious foundational reform would have to take place, or else we may have an implosion from within, or if, as some people suspect, another attack by Israel, which may lead to people flooding the streets this time and basically bringing the regime down.
I think that people over here often assume that in a post-Islamic state, the Iranian people would naturally be friendly toward America, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
Iranians, if you go Iranian people, not much differently. There are two different things as well, because there is a nuclear program which started during Shah's time, basically as early as 1967. And then we have the nuclear policy of this government, which has alienated, isolated Iran. It has cost hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. It has led to nothing. It has been damaging politically and financially, economically for the country. So, with the nuclear program, which Iran had before the revolution, people are okay. I mean, as far as peaceful nuclear program. But with nuclear policy of this establishment, the Islamic Republic, people have a lot of issues. And no, I don't think the attack that the US had on Iran's nuclear side has particularly aggravated the average Iranian person against the United States. They see it more the weaknesses and the adventurism of their own government rather than United States.
Do you think that the problems between Iran and the US are a matter of one government to another? And to what extent is it a problem of the relationship between the Iranian people and the American people?
No, Iranians have never really had historically a problem with the United States. I know there's always the question of coup of 1953, that an Iranian prime minister was deposed. But now that documents have been released by the United States and by Britain, people know that it's not as clear cut and black and white as it used to be portrayed. It wasn't just the United States, it was United States and Britain together, first of all. And secondly, the Iranian prime minister had actually been deposed legally by the king, who had such power granted to him by the constitution. And therefore, it is not really a coup, as they call it, but rather a change of government sanctioned by the constitution. And the king used his power, constitutional right, to depose the prime minister. This was a prime minister who had dissolved parliament. We should not forget that. He had dissolved parliament. And instead of referring cases to parliament, he would go and hold a referendum in the country, referendum where voting was very dubious and questionable. And his own party were very critical of the way the Prime Minister Mossadegh was functioning and operating. So it's not a question of the United States. But I should add that the last 25 years of the Shah's rule, from 1953 to 1978-79, Iranians never had it so good. They were affluent. And that was when the United States had influence in Iran. So they know that. May I also add, in the constitutional revolution of 1906, early 20th century, there was one foreigner who fought on the side of people for freedom. And that was an American, Howard Baskerville, who fought. He was a missionary teaching in Tabriz in northwest of Iran. And he joined the freedom fighters and he was killed. And he's referred to as martyr, and he was buried there. Generally speaking, I wouldn't say that Iranians hold ill feelings towards America. There's always this professional leftist, I would call professional leftist, who never forgave the United States for winning the Cold War, whose mark of intellectuality is summed up in their taking up an anti-American position. And I call them professional political agitators. That's what I call them. So no, but generally the average man, no, they don't, I don't think, hold any particular. We have the largest number of Iranians abroad in the United States. That speaks for itself.
A big part of this podcast series is talking about relations with China, Russia, the great powers. In that regard, can I ask, have those relationships between Iran and Russia, Iran and China, shifted as a result of the war with Israel and the United States?
As I said, Iran was pretty much disappointed that the two countries didn't actually lift a finger other than issuing statements in support of Iran and condemning the attack. Iran has signed strategic partnerships with both countries, Russia and China. And every now and then they hold these maritime maneuvers with China or drills with Russia. But it showed the limits, the 12-day war showed the limits of this partnership. Iranians realized that should push come to shove, neither Russia nor China are going to get themselves involved in a military conflict. When the war occurred immediately, China had about over 3,000 nationals in Iran, took them all out of Iran, and had actually sent cargo planes apparently, partly to evacuate the Chinese nationals. Iran needs China to sell its oil because of the sanctions imposed by the United States. China welcomes that because it buys cheaper than the market price, and it pays either in Chinese currency or in Chinese commodities, which is perfect for China. So China has no problem at all with this situation continuing. China receives about 11% of its oil from Iran, whereas Iran's export to China are about 90% of its total export. So that since Iran needs China more than China needs Iran, and China is welcoming this relationship, it's to its benefit. As for Russia, of course, China is providing some for Iranian missile program, reportedly sending some components, and also reportedly some of the components sent to Houthis in Yemen. As for Russia, Russia receives Iranian drone technology in return for vague promises of support for Iran. Nothing more than that. Iran's perception has been that because it is staunchly anti-American, both Russia and China will stand by Iran and defend it with all they have so as not to allow American influence in Iran, which is basic and central in the Middle East. True, to a degree, yes. In fact, true to a degree that Russians may even accept a nuclear Iran if the price of getting rid of nuclear weapons is American influence in Iran.
I guess I have one last question, and that's, do you think it's possible for Iran to restore the status quo from before the war? Will that ever be possible?
No. I think not just the war itself, which is a big part of it, but also what has happened since October 7th, 2023. Iranian proxies have basically disappeared. I mean, have really been diminished to a large degree. The war itself exposed Iranian weaknesses. Always, the talk was they wouldn't dare attack Iran because Iran will rain down missiles on Israel. This was always such not just amongst Iranian officials saying it, but a lot of foreigners believed it. Western diplomats believed it. Okay, some of those missiles were going to come, a lot of it from Hezbollah, but Hezbollah's gone, the military side of it, at least. And we saw that Iran itself, yes, could inflict damage. Missiles spread fear amongst population. And they did that effectively. But missiles do not win wars in themselves. But they spread fear. That's very true. And they did. And Israel suffered and doesn't want that, preferably to an Iran. I hear he's working on its defenses at the moment not to allow this to happen again. But as I said, missiles do not win wars. Iran, in the first day of the war, lost, God knows, I mean, about half of its top commanders, IRGC, and had President Trump, not intervened to stop the war, Israel could have gone further, and we are not sure how far, but it's reasonable to assume more damage would have been inflicted on Iranian military complex and Iranian military leaders. So it would be, I do not see Iran going back. Nobody now, even the small countries in the Persian Gulf that were thinking of Iran can send missiles and can really demolish economy in the United Arab Emirates or in Qatar or in Kuwait just by not they see that maybe Iran is not as powerful in missile technology even as they feared Iran would be. So no, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for Iran to return to the anti-war status quo. I do not see that.
Well, thank you so much, Farid. It's been a pleasure to have you.